Breaking news. Chinese Coast Guard vessels fire water cannons at Philippine boats, escalating tensions in the South China Sea. The world is watching as every move could tip the balance for the entire region. Tonight, we break down 3 key incidents from March that signal a dangerous new phase in this conflict. Early March. The sun rises over the South China Sea, casting a golden glow on waters that have become a global flashpoint. The South China Sea is on edge. Tensions simmer just beneath the surface as rival patrols crisscross these disputed waters, each side watching the other with suspicion. On this morning, Philippine supply boats, escorted by their Coast Guard, set out on a high-stakes mission. Their destination, the Second Thomas Shoal, a remote, contested reef that has become a symbol of Manila's sovereignty and resolve. Their mission is simple, yet fraught with risk: deliver food, water, and essential supplies to Filipino troops stationed on a grounded, rusting WW2-era ship, deliberately run aground years ago to assert the Philippines' claim. As the convoy nears the shoal, Chinese Coast Guard vessels loom on the horizon, moving swiftly to intercept. The tension is palpable, radios crackle with warnings, and the crews brace for confrontation. Suddenly, without warning, powerful water cannons erupt from the Chinese ships, unleashing torrents of water at the Philippine boats. The force is overwhelming, sending the smaller vessels veering off course. Windows shatter, decks flood. These are industrial-strength cannons, not just hoses. The impact is violent. Glass splinters across the deck and seawater pours into the cabins. Yet the Filipino crews refuse to back down. They scramble to control the flooding, patch up damage, and keep their boats afloat. The danger is real, but so is their determination. News of the clash spreads rapidly, igniting international outrage. Video footage of the assault goes viral, shared across social media and broadcast by major news networks. Condemnation pours in from the US, Japan, Australia, and the European Union, all calling for restraint and respect for international law. The Philippine government swiftly denounces the attack, labeling it illegal, aggressive, and a blatant violation of their sovereignty. Officials demand accountability and international support. Beijing, however, stands firm. At a press briefing, Chinese officials insist they are simply enforcing their own laws in what they call Chinese waters, dismissing Manila's claims as unfounded. These confrontations are becoming more frequent and more intense. Each new incident adds fuel to the fire, raising the stakes and making the situation ever more volatile. Every clash chips away at the fragile status quo, making it harder for either side to back down without losing face. Around the world, analysts and governments are asking the same question: how far is China willing to go to assert its claims? For the Filipino sailors, these aren't just headlines or political statements. They're living the consequences. Some tend to minor injuries, others stare out at the sea, wondering what the next mission will bring. Images of shattered glass, battered hulls, and soaked uniforms circulate online, fueling anger and a sense of injustice in Manila and beyond. The hashtag West Philippine Sea trends across social media, uniting Filipinos at home and abroad. Protests erupt, with citizens demanding their government stand firm against foreign aggression. For many, this is about more than territory. It's about dignity, national pride, and the right to stand up to a much bigger power. China, meanwhile, doubles down, accusing the Philippines of provocation and warning against further illegal actions. Diplomatic rhetoric sharpens and the space for compromise shrinks with every exchange. The risk of misunderstanding grows. Diplomats scramble behind closed doors, searching for a way to de-escalate. But in this climate, words may not be enough to prevent the next crisis. The risk of miscalculation is real and rising. One wrong move could spark a conflict that draws in powers from around the world. The United States reiterates its commitment to the Philippines under the Mutual Defense Treaty, signaling that any attack on Philippine vessels could have far-reaching consequences. The warning is clear. Further escalation could trigger a broader conflict, with unpredictable results for the entire region. This confrontation ends without loss of life, but the scars, both physical and psychological, remain. The sense of vulnerability lingers. The Philippine boats limp back to port, battered but unbowed. Their mission incomplete, but their resolve only strengthened by the ordeal. With every incident, the South China Sea grows more volatile, the waters more dangerous, and the stakes higher for everyone involved. Analysts and experts debate what comes next. Will China back down, or will it push even harder? Is a peaceful resolution still possible? The water cannon confrontation marks a turning point, a stark warning of just how dangerous these waters have become, and how quickly a standoff can spiral out of control. In the South China Sea, every action triggers a reaction. Each escalation sets off a chain of events that ripples far beyond these waters. Every new incident sends shockwaves across Southeast Asia, raising fears of a wider conflict and drawing in the world's attention. And as technology enters the fray, the risks only multiply. Next, lasers on the high seas. What happened when advanced technology was unleashed in these contested waters? Let's find out. Just days after the dramatic water cannon clash that made headlines around the world, another shocking incident erupts in the South China Sea, sending ripples of alarm throughout the region and beyond. This time, the confrontation isn't about brute force or physical barriers. It's about the use of advanced technology as a weapon. According to reports, a Chinese Coast Guard ship allegedly targets a Philippine vessel with a powerful, military-grade laser, temporarily blinding several members of its crew and causing chaos on the bridge. The Philippine Coast Guard was on a routine but risky resupply mission navigating the tense waters near 2nd Thomas Shoal, a flashpoint in the ongoing territorial dispute. Suddenly, out of the mist and haze, a piercing green beam slices through the air, striking the bridge of the Philippine ship and flooding it with an intense, blinding light. Crew members immediately report searing pain in their eyes, blurred vision, and in some cases, temporary blindness. The shock and confusion on board are palpable as medical personnel rush to treat the injured. These aren't ordinary lasers. They are high-powered, military-grade devices, specifically designed to disorient, disable, and send a chilling message to anyone who dares to challenge their use. In response, the Philippine government quickly gathers evidence, photos, medical reports, and eyewitness accounts, and presents them at a press conference, lodging a formal diplomatic protest against China. The message from Manila is clear and unequivocal. This act is a blatant violation of international law, specifically the rules that govern conduct at sea and the use of potentially harmful technology. China, however, swiftly denies any wrongdoing. Officials claim the lasers were non-lethal, intended only for navigation safety, and pose no real threat to personnel. But for the sailors affected, the damage is already done. The psychological impact lingers, and the sense of vulnerability grows. The incident quickly becomes a flashpoint in the ongoing conflict, fueling fears of so-called hybrid warfare, where technology, intimidation, and traditional military tactics blend together at sea. The United States and its allies are quick to condemn the use of lasers, calling it both dangerous and irresponsible, and warning that such actions threaten regional stability. Experts warn that these kinds of tactics could easily spiral out of control, leading to accidental escalation or even open conflict. For the sailors on the receiving end, the experience is harrowing, like staring directly into the sun, but with the added fear that the next attack could be even worse. Anxiety spreads among the crew. If lasers are being used now, what other technologies might be deployed in the future? The uncertainty is unsettling. International law is explicit. The use of lasers to blind or disorient personnel is strictly prohibited under multiple treaties and conventions. The Philippines demands accountability on the world stage, while China remains defiant, refusing to admit any fault or change its tactics. The incident dominates news cycles and social media feeds, with calls for action and justice echoing across the region and beyond. The sense of vulnerability and insecurity grows for every nation with interests in these contested waters, as the risk of further incidents increases. The laser attack is more than just a provocation. It's a calculated signal, a warning shot in a high-stakes game of maritime brinkmanship. China is making it clear that it is willing to use every tool at its disposal, technology, intimidation, and sheer presence, to assert its sweeping claims. Diplomats from around the world scramble to de-escalate the situation, but the trust between nations is eroding with every new incident. The South China Sea, already a hotspot of tension, is now even more unstable, with increased naval activity and the constant threat of confrontation. For those on the front lines, the sailors and Coast Guard crews, every mission into these contested waters is a gamble with real risks. Despite the dangers, the Philippines vows to continue its resupply missions, determined not to be intimidated or deterred. In response, China ramps up its presence, deploying more ships, increasing patrols, and applying even greater pressure on its rivals. The message from Beijing, is unmistakable. These waters are ours, and we will defend our claims by any means necessary. The laser incident has become a powerful symbol of the new normal in the South China Sea, where technology and intimidation go hand in hand, and the rules of engagement are constantly being tested. In these contested waters, every confrontation, no matter how small, carries the risk of becoming the next major flashpoint. The stakes are higher than ever. The world watches and wonders, what happens if China escalates from harassment to a full blockade? The consequences could be dire. To understand the gravity of the situation, let's take a closer look at the ongoing standoff at Second Thomas Shoal. By late March, the situation in the South China Sea boils over, reaching a critical point that captures the world's attention. Tensions that have simmered for months now erupt into a full-blown maritime standoff. The Philippine Navy, determined to uphold its presence and support its troops, prepares another high-stakes resupply mission to Second Thomas Shoal. Every box of food, every drum of water, and every piece of equipment is loaded with urgency and hope. But this time, the Chinese Coast Guard, backed by maritime militia, forms a formidable blockade. Their ships physically bar the way, creating an impenetrable wall at sea and preventing any approach to the grounded Sierra Madre. Philippine supply boats, carrying vital essentials for the isolated crew, inch forward under the relentless gaze of Chinese vessels. The tension is palpable, every movement watched, every maneuver shadowed. The blockade is uncompromising. Chinese ships display warning banners and broadcast stern messages. Turn back or face the consequences. The threat is clear and the stakes are high. Undeterred, the Philippine crews radio for passage, invoking international law and the right to resupply their outpost. Their voices are steady, but the uncertainty is evident. The Chinese response is swift and unyielding. No entry. The message is repeated, both over the radio and in official statements, leaving no room for negotiation. The standoff unfolds live on television, with cameras capturing every tense exchange and every close-quarters maneuver. The world watches as the drama plays out in real time. Across the globe, newsrooms buzz with updates. Crowds gather around screens, anxious as the risk of confrontation grows with each passing hour. For the Filipino sailors, this mission is deeply personal. The men stationed on the Sierra Madre depend on these supplies for survival: food, water, medicine, and a lifeline to home. Yet the odds are daunting. Chinese ships not only outnumber but also outgun their Philippine counterparts, casting a long shadow over the mission. In Manila, government officials file another diplomatic protest, demanding that China withdraw its ships and respect Philippine sovereignty. Beijing, however, stands firm. Chinese officials refuse to back down, insisting that the shoal is indisputably Chinese territory and dismissing Manila's claims. The war of words intensifies, echoing across news channels and social media. But despite the heated rhetoric, the blockade remains unbroken. The United States and other allies issue stern warnings to China, cautioning against any use of force and reaffirming their commitment to freedom of navigation in the region. As days drag on, supplies dwindle. Filipino sailors ration food and water, anxiety mounting as they wait for a breakthrough that never seems to come. In a desperate move, a Philippine boat attempts to slip through the blockade, but is quickly intercepted and forced to retreat by the vigilant Chinese ships. For the men aboard the Sierra Madre, the blockade becomes a grueling test of endurance and morale. Their resolve is pushed to the limit as they endure isolation and uncertainty. Back home, their plight ignites a wave of solidarity. Street protests erupt in Manila, with citizens waving flags and demanding action to support their countrymen. Meanwhile, China maintains its hard line, ignoring reporters' questions and keeping its ships firmly in place, unmoved by international criticism. The risk of miscalculation looms large. One wrong move, one misunderstood signal, and the standoff could spiral out of control. Analysts warn that a single mistake could ignite a wider conflict, drawing in regional powers and threatening peace across Asia. Behind the scenes, diplomats scramble to defuse the crisis. Emergency meetings and tense negotiations play out, but the blockade remains stubbornly in place. For the Philippines, the blockade is a wake-up call. Calls grow louder to modernize the Navy, strengthen alliances, and assert the nation's rights in the face of growing pressure. The blockade is no longer just a local dispute. It has become a test of international resolve, with the world's eyes fixed on the outcome. The South China Sea is now a battleground for power and influence, with military ships from multiple countries patrolling contested waters and tensions running high. The blockade at Second Thomas Shoal is not the end of the story, just the latest chapter in a long and uncertain saga. So, Where does that leave us? The world waits, anxious for resolution, as the next move could shape the future of the region. Let's wrap up. Transition to final scene. Water cannons, blinding lasers, tools of intimidation and escalation, blockades, each incident a warning, each confrontation a stark reminder of just how fragile peace can be in these waters. These aren't just headlines, they're the lived reality for those risking everything on the front lines. The South China Sea is more volatile than ever before, with tensions rising daily. Every action brings us closer to a dangerous tipping point. The world is watching closely, and the choices made here will shape the region's future for generations. I'm Chris Cuomo, and this is Deep. Stay safe and stay informed.